So now we're going to do our case study, which is the 2025 bloodstream infection case study, the case of unusual suspects, with our colleagues, Mary Whitaker, Marissa McMeen, Dominique Godfrey, and LaTasha Boswell. So first, we're going to start with Mary Whitaker, who will do the first part of our case study.
Sorry, everyone. I was having some technical difficulties. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us and hanging with us. I look forward to learning with you. I'm Mary Whitaker. I'm a member of the protocol and training team. Let's get kicked off. All right. So for the objectives, by the end of this case study, you'll be able to define key terms used in bloodstream infections, such as laboratory confirmed bloodstream infections, or LCBI, infection window periods, IWP, the date of event, DOE, repeat infection timeframe, RIT, secondary BSI attribution period, or SBAP. You'll be able to demonstrate key concepts for bloodstream infection, surveillance, and apply key concepts using bloodstream infection case studies. Before I begin, I would like to mention a few helpful hints as I review the case study scenario. There are 5 parts of this case study, and each part is a continuation of the previous information provided. If you're ready to begin, send me a thumbs up. Awesome. All righty, so let's jump into the case study. So our case study is Mr. Izzy Septic. Mr. Izzy Septic presented to the emergency department on June 1st. He's a 68-year-old male who presents to the emergency department with fever, chills, urinary retention, and a blood pressure of 110/76. He has 2 blood cultures ×2 drawn, and they're positive for coagulase negative staph in 1 bottle. On 6/2, Mr. Septic is admitted to ICU with a blood pressure of 100/60, and a right subclavian triple lumen catheter is inserted, and vasopressors are initiated. On 6/3, he has a fever of 38.2 degrees Celsius or 100.8 Fahrenheit noted. Blood cultures ×2 are drawn on June 5th, and they are positive for Staphylococcus epidermidis and Candida albicans in both sets. All right, so let's jump into question number 1. Which laboratory confirmed bloodstream infection criterion is met? A, LCBI 2, B, MBI LCBI 1, C, LCBI 1, or D, both A and C. You'll note that I have included the case to the right for you to refer to. I'll give you a few seconds to review this, and then please put your answers in the chat.
So Mary, we're seeing mostly D's here, but we do have some mixes of C's and A's.
Awesome. Well, let's go to the next slide and review the answer and rationale. So the correct answer is D. This was a little bit of a tricky one. The patient meets both LCBI2 and LCBI1 criterion. The patient has matching common commensals and an eligible symptom meeting LCBI2, and also has a recognized pathogen identified, which is an LCBI1. Therefore, they met both criterion. It's important to identify both because it might impact your date of event. Great job, everybody. Let's see what question 2 says. Okay, what is the LCBI date of event? 6-1, B, 6-3, C, 6-5, or D, I am not sure. Again, the case study is going to stay there to the right. And remember, put your answers in the chat.
Mary, we're seeing kind of a mix here, I think, but mostly A's. But we're seeing some B's and C's thrown in there as well.
Okay, let's talk about it. The correct answer is B. If you remember from the scenario, Mr. Septic didn't get admitted to an inpatient location until the 2nd. So A cannot be the answer because the date of event cannot be prior to his admission to an inpatient location. But I threw this in here to review something from chapter 2. So when more than one criterion of a site-specific infection, in this case, BSI definition is met, you're going to identify the IWP resulting in the earliest date of event. So for this case study, the matching common commensal blood cultures are drawn on 6-5, which starts a bloodstream infection IWP of 6-2 to 6-8. However, the patient has a fever on 6-3. Therefore, the LCBI2 date of event is 6-3. Although the LCBI1 date of event would be 6-5, we would use the earliest BSI date of event of 6-3. You can find this in Chapter 2, Identifying HAIs for NHSN Surveillance, page 2-5, Note 2. And I did want to note here that if the documented blood pressure of 100/60 meets your facility's parameters for hypotension on 6-2, then the BSI date of event would be 6-2. Remember, NHSN does not define hypotension. Facilities must define the parameters for their facility that meet hypotension for that patient population. Great job. Let's see what the next question says. Okay, what type of event is reported in NHSN? A, an LCBI2 with a date of event of 6-3 with the common commensal reported first and the recognized pathogen second. B, an LCBI2 with a date of event of 6-3 with a recognized pathogen reported first and the common commensal reported second. C, an LCBI1 with the date of event of 6-3 with the common commensal reported first and the recognized pathogen second. Or D, an LCBI1 with a date of event of 6-3 with the recognized pathogen reported first and the common commensal second. I'm going to give you a few extra seconds as this is a little bit of a complicated question. Put your answers in the chat.
Mary, we're kind of seeing a split here between A and D.
Awesome. Well, let's go to the next slide for the answer. The answer is D, an LCBI1 with a date of event of 6-3 with the recognized pathogen reported first and the common commensal second. Let's jump to the next slide to see what the rationale is. The business rules within NHSN, the NHSN application require entering the pathogen first. So therefore, the recognized pathogen would be number 1, and the common commensal would be reported as pathogen number 2. In the bloodstream infection chapter 4, it states that if a patient meets both LCBI1 and LCBI2 or LCBI3 criterion, report the LCBI1 first. You can find that guidance in the bloodstream infection chapter, page 4-7, note 1. Awesome job, everybody. Let's go to the next question. Okay. Is this present on admission or a healthcare associated infection event? A, for present on admission, or B, for healthcare associated infection?
think it's mostly A we're seeing.
Awesome job. So the answer is A, present on admission. The patient was admitted to ICU on 6/2, and the LCBI date of event is 6/3. The LCBI date of event is within the POA timeframe. If you recall from Marissa McMeen's presentation on Chapter 2, the present on admission timeframe is the 2 days before admission and the day of admission to an inpatient location and the day after. Great job, everyone. Marissa McMeen will present the next section of the case study.
Thanks, Mary. So let's get started with our part 2 of our BSI case study. And here is the case study here for you. On 6/18, we had Mr. Izzy Septic, who is still in the hospital, but his condition is improving and he is transferred to the medical ward. However, after transfer, he codes, and during resuscitation efforts, staff are unable to infuse medication through 2 of the 3 lumens of his TLC, which is still in place. On 6/18, blood cultures are collected and are negative ×2. They do place a midline in the upper left arm, and the patient is transferred back to the ICU. On 6/20, he spikes a fever of 100.5 degrees Fahrenheit, and they collect blood specimens at that time. On 6/21, per physician orders, the antimicrobials are administered, and over the next few days, his health does improve. On 6/22, the blood specimens are showing positive for Candida albicans ×2. Just to note, we'll have a little abbreviated of this case study for all the questions, so you don't have to hurry up and write everything down. So the first question here, which laboratory confirmed bloodstream infection criterion is met? Is it A, LCBI 1, B, LCBI 2, C, LCBI 3, or D, MBI LCBI 1? I'll give you a few moments here, but I am seeing an overwhelming A response from everyone. So I think we got this answer. Go to the next slide. And you are correct. So an LCBI criterion 1 is met. And this uses those positive blood cultures for Candida albicans, which is a recognized pathogen. And remember, for LCBI 1 criteria, you have no additional elements, so you don't need any signs or symptoms such as that fever to meet the criterion. So question number 2, what is the LCBI date of event? Is it A, 6/18, B, 6/20, C, 6/21, or D, 6/22?
Hey, Marissa, we're seeing mostly D's and a handful of B's coming in on the chat.
Okay, so let's go over this because this could be a little tricky and I could see why you guys are probably picking 6/22. So let's go over to the rationale. So the answer is actually B, 6/20. And this is because the BSI date of event, the LCBI 1 date of event is always the collection date of the first positive blood specimen used to set the BSI IWP. And if you recalled, that those blood cultures were collected on 6/20, but they resulted positive on 6/22. So you do not want to use the result date as your date of event. You want to use the collect date. Question number 3, what is the BSI repeat infection time frame? Is it A, 6/18 to 7/1, B, 6/20 to 7/3, C, 6/21 to 7/4, or D, 6/22 to 7/5?
Hey, Marissa, we're seeing mostly B. A couple other answers scattered in, but mostly B.
So if we're seeing mostly B, then you are correct. And if you can remember there that in the previous question, we had the date of event as 6/20. So the BSI date of event is 6/20, and it starts that day one of the BSI RIT. The RIT is a 14-day time frame, which no new infections are reported. So using that 6/20 and then as day one, and then adding those 13 days, you're going to get a BSI RIT from 6/20 to 7/3. But it is important to note here that only the primary BSIs create a 14-day BSI RIT. Question number 4, what is the location of attribution? Is it A, the ICU, B, the emergency department, or C, the medical ward? And I'm seeing mostly A's here. I do see a few C's, but I think it's overwhelmingly A. So if we can go to the rationale. And the correct answer is A, the ICU. He is transferred to the medical ward on 6/18. However, remember he was later transferred to the ICU on the same day. He remains in the ICU, and the positive blood cultures were collected on 6/20. So on that BSI date of event of 6/20, he is in the ICU, and therefore the location of attribution is in the ICU. Question number 5, is the BSI event a central line associated BSI or CLABSI? Is it yes, it is a CLABSI, B, no, it is not, or C, we just don't have enough information to answer it? And everyone is getting this one right. You know, everyone's saying yes, it is a CLABSI. So let's go to and you are correct, it is a CLABSI. That triple lumen catheter that was inserted on 6/2, although fluids, they are unable to be infused through 2 of the 3 lumens, it still remains in place on that BSA date of event of 6/20. And on that date, it is in place for greater than 2 consecutive calendar days, which makes it a CLABSI. And we're going to move on to part 3 of our BSI case study with Dominique Godfrey.
Okay, and so we continue with Mr. Izzy Septic, and on 7/5, during his line care assessment, the nurse notices redness and purulence at the midline site. He does report pain, and there's a culture collected from the midline site that is positive for Staph aureus. There's also a fever noted on 7/6, and a blood specimen is collected, and it too is positive for Staph aureus. The midline is removed due to infection, and a new central line is placed per ID recommendation on 7/7, and antimicrobials are administered for 14 days. So our first question for part B, which laboratory confirmed bloodstream infection criterion is met?
Dominique, I'm seeing mostly A's here.
All
I mean,
right,
almost all A's.
almost all A's. That is great. LCBI 1 is the criterion that is met using the positive blood culture for Staphylococcus aureus. Staphylococcus aureus is a recognized pathogen, so no additional elements are required to meet the criteria. Question 2. What is the LCBI date of event? Seven 4, 7/5, 7/6, or 7/7?
Seeing a lot of B's, some C's. I think it's kind of split between some B and C here.
Let's take a closer look. The correct answer is C. The BSI date of event is 7/6. The positive blood culture was identified on 7/6. If we go back, 7/5 is where we have the positive site-specific culture. So for the LCBI date of event, that is the collection date of the blood culture. Question 3. What is the infection window period? What is the BSI IWP? Remember the BSI date of event and use the date of event to set your IWP.
People are putting in mostly C's, Dominique.
Okay. Let's go to the answer. The correct answer is C. The IWP is 7.3 through 7.9. LCBI 1 criterion we know is met with the positive blood culture for Staphylococcus aureus. Because Staph aureus is a recognized pathogen, the positive blood culture is used to set the infection window period. The IWP is set using the diagnostic test, in this case, the positive blood culture, the 3 calendar days before and the 3 calendar days after. Question 4. Is the BSI event a central line associated BSI? Is the BSI event eclampsia? A for yes, B for no, C, not enough information.
I think we're having a mix here. A, B, and some are even saying C.
Let's take a look. So this required us to remember part 1, which I know is difficult when we have these case studies with multiple parts. The BSI event is eclampsia. The triple lumen catheter is inserted on 6/2 and it is still in place. On the BSI date of event, which we have already determined is 7/6, the triple lumen catheter is in place for greater than 2 consecutive calendar days. Okay, and I believe this may be the last question for part 3. What CLABSI exclusion is met? Is it A, patient injection, B, epidermolysis bullosa, C, pus at the vascular access site, or D, Munchausen syndrome by proxy?
Dominique, everyone's got this one with C.
Wonderful. I'm so glad you came to boot camp today. C is the correct answer. The pus at the vascular access site requires a patient to have both an eligible central line and another vascular access device with pus at the other vascular access device site. There's purulence noted on 7.5 at the midline site. That is our other vascular access device. And the organism identified matches the Staph aureus from the blood and the organism identified on 7.5 from the midline site. Because all required elements are identified during the BSI IWP, remember that's very important, the pus at the vascular access site, CLABSI exclusion is met. Now I'll turn the case study over to LaTasha Boswell for part 4 and 5.
So Mr. Izzy Septic is still with us and he's admitted with a TLC. He has a TLC in place. He's currently in a ward location. That's on 7/24. On 7/25, there's a 103 fever. He has blood cultures collected that are positive ×2 for Staph aureus. On 7/26, during the night shift, the patient complains of bilateral knee pain and swelling. On 7/27, on the morning shift, a joint aspiration is performed. The culture is negative. However, the fluid is documented as yellow thick. On 7/28, there is physician documentation of continuing antibiotics for Staphylococcus aureus bacteremia. So my first question is, what event can be cited in this case? A, bone 1, B, joint 3C, C, joint 1, or D, not sure.
We're seeing a lot of C's and some other mixes in there, but I want to say mostly C's here.
Okay, so everyone is saying C. The actual answer to this question is joint 3C. So let's look at the rationale on the next slide. So the 7/25 Staph aureus blood cultures create a 7/22 to 7/28 joint IWP. During that IWP on 7/26, they have 2 eligible symptoms during the joint IWP. Because the patient had 2 eligible symptoms and they had positive blood cultures for Staph aureus, a joint 3C is cited. The patient could not meet joint 1 because the joint fluid culture was negative on 7/27. So the next question, what documentation can be used to meet the suspected joint infection criterion? A, the joint fluid aspiration and culture, B, the imaging test, C, the 7/28 physician documentation, or D, not sure.
LaTasha, we're seeing mostly A's right now. Maybe a C here or there, but now I'm seeing definitely more A's. Yep.
Awesome. So if you selected A, joint fluid aspiration and culture, you are correct. So let's look at the rationale. So on 7/27, we have documentation of a joint aspiration. Remember, the culture was negative, and then there was documentation of yellow thick fluid. So the collection of the joint fluid in this case would meet the suspicion. Question 3, can the blood specimens be deemed secondary? A for yes, B for no, C for not sure.
LaTasha, it's overwhelmingly A.
Awesome. You are correct. Yes, the blood specimen can be deemed secondary. So because the Staph aureus blood specimens were used as an element to cite the joint 3C, it is deemed secondary. In this case, we're applying scenario 2, where the blood specimen is used as an element. Great job. So what other criterion can be cited in this case? A, joint 1, B, joint 2, C, no other event can be cited, or D, not sure. Whoever gets this one correct gets the gold star.
Seeing mostly B's here, so I wonder, we'll have to see if they get that gold star.
Oh, they got the gold star. I'm so happy. I'm so happy. My heart is so full. So yes, they met joint 2. Good job, everyone. because the fluid met the eligible color and eligible descriptor combined, it met for the evidence of joint bursa infection on gross anatomic exam. Excellent job. All right, so now we're going to move on to the fifth and final part of our case study. So it's August 15th, and Mr. Izzy Septic is still with us. He still has the TLC in place. He has developed severe congestive heart failure and being monitored closely by cardiology. On 8/16, he has a right knee that's swollen and tender. The joint fluid collected is cultured. It's positive for MRSA. They start antibiotics. On 8/19, 8/21, there are positive blood cultures for MRSA. On 8/23, there's blood cultures positive for Enterococcus faecalis times 2. On 8/24, a TEE is performed, and it's severe tricuspid regurgitation. It's also noted here that a year before in a previous TEE, that there is a mild tricuspid regurgitation. On 8/25, the physician documents that the patient has endocarditis and they're starting them on ceftazidime. So in reviewing the joint definition, can an event be cited? A for yes, B for no.
LaTasha, everyone's saying A.
Awesome. I'm so proud of y'all. So the event that can be cited is a joint one. The joint fluid culture that's positive for MRSA would meet for a joint. And I think I just gave away the next answer. But a joint one was cited on 8/16 using the positive joint fluid culture. So again, that 8/16 joint fluid culture meets for a joint. So can the blood specimens that are listed on 8/19, 8/21, and 8/23 be deemed secondary? A, yes, all of the positive blood specimens. B, no, not all of the blood specimens. C, just the Enterococcus blood specimens. Or D, just the MRSA blood specimens.
I'm seeing a lot of D's, but some B's.
Okay. The answer is actually just the MRSA blood specimen. So technically, no, not all the blood specimens was not wrong either. So let's look at it. So the MRSA positive joint fluid means for joint one, right? So that 8/16 joint fluid creates an 8/13 to 8/19 infection window period, an 8/16 to 8/29 repeat infection time frame, and an 8/13 to 8/29 SVAP. The joint SVAP will capture all matching blood specimens on 19 and 8/21 because they contain an organism that matches the joint. Can another event be cited in this case? A, endo 4, B, endo 5, C, endo 6, D, HAI, LCBI, CLABSI, LCBI 1, CLABSI, E, no events can be cited.
LaTasha, I'm kind of seeing here a mix between A and D.
Okay. All right. So let's look at the answer. D is actually the correct answer, HAI, LCBI 1, and CLABSI. So let's look at the rationale. So again, the 8/19 and 8/21 blood cultures are captured in the SVAP of the joint event. However, the 8/23 Enterococcus faecalis blood cultures do not contain an organism that matches the joint fluid. So for that reason, it cannot be deemed secondary to the joint. And looking at endocarditis, we noticed that there's a TEE with severe tricuspid regurgitation. However, this imaging is not eligible because the previous TEE revealed mild tricuspid regurgitation. And remember, when you have valvular regurgitation on imaging, it must be significant and it must be new. And because the previous TEE revealed that the patient had mild tricuspid regurgitation, the current TEE is not eligible for use. So in this case, an HAI LCBI 1 CLABSI was cited on 8/23 using an enterococcus faecalis blood specimens. And I believe that was the end of the case study. Please give yourselves a hand. You did an excellent job.